Okay, welcome to the board learning series with EJF. Today we will be discussing plant healthcare and its importance with our esteemed guest, Lou Meyer from Davey Tree. Following the presentation, there will be an opportunity for questions and answers in a Q&A session. This webinar is being recorded, and the link to the webinar will be provided via email afterwards. I will now turn the floor over to Lou.
Hey, everybody. Thanks so much, Sarah, for the introduction and for inviting me to talk to all your managers. Hopefully, we could provide some great information on plant healthcare and arboricultural services and any questions that you might have regarding those. So I do have a PowerPoint presentation, but before I dive into that, a little bit about the different services that we offer here in the capital region. We also have offices down in the Norfolk area. So I know that you all have expanded down there. We're a national company. We're based out of Northeast Ohio. We have offices across the United States and Canada. Been in business since 1880. So we're the oldest tree care company in North America, possibly the world. We don't know, but we'll go with North America for now. We offer tree care services is how we started. So prunings, removals, plant health care. Not all of that was there at the beginning. We started with just pruning and removals, which is what tree care was in the late 1800s. But we set the course for what plant health care would become. Today, we offer those core services plus grounds management. So for landscapes that have turf and shrubs and mulch beds, we do all of those kinds of things. We also have an environmental consulting division that, particularly for groups like EJF, helps with stormwater BMPs to make sure that you're compliant with those. We have survey teams. If you're constructing anything, we can put together environmental surveys for you. We have an archaeologist division that if you're building in Alexandria and Old Town, for instance, we can go in and look for any culturally important artifacts, I think is the right word, to make sure that you're not infringing there. But pretty much anything environmental or outdoors, we can help take care of.
Wow.
So yeah, lots of good stuff. Expanded a long way from being just a tree care company. So like I said, today we're going to be talking about plant health care, which is let me see here. There we go. You can see it now. Plant health care, which is do you see this the slideshow? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I see the slideshow. It just needs to get full screen because you're not in
there we go.
presentation mode. There you go.
Great. Perfect. So plant health care is the practice of healthcare on plants. Much like you go to a doctor, you take your pets to a vet, trees and shrubs are living beings, and we as arborists are those medical providers for plants. Now, we're different than plants, obviously, in many ways as living beings, but some of the important things to note, some bullet points for your mind, is that trees and shrubs require input, much like we do. So we require nutrients, and so do trees and shrubs. We'll talk about that. We require medical input when ill, and so do trees and shrubs, and we'll talk about that. And we require an environment that fosters a healthy lifestyle, and we'll talk about that. So these are the ways that these things are like us. Plant healthcare is the soft approach to tree and shrub care. So, people think of tree care companies as just pruning and removal. We want to take this proactive approach. We know that your properties have invested a tremendous amount of money into their landscapes to install them, to maintain them through pruning and through fertilization of turf and other things. And so taking the proactive approach by protecting those green assets results in lower cost long term and increases those benefits they provide. I'm guessing you all know the benefits that a green infrastructure provides to your landscapes, but just some brief facts that we know in the industry that green properties produce a lot of benefits for the residents, guests, and employees of them. Hospitals that have tree canopies on them that are visible from hospital rooms, they have faster recovery rates. Schools that are tree lined have higher test scores compared to other schools in the same level in the same environment. A real estate cost. We know that tree lined streets result in a higher cost of houses when looked across the board. So those green infrastructures bring far more benefits to properties than just quote unquote looking good. Again, a little bit about Davy Tree, founded in 1880. Oh, the other big important thing, I'm glad I put this in here, that's important to us here in the capital region. Washington, D.C. has very proactive tree protection laws. Uh, if you try and remove a tree over 30 inches in diameter in DC, it has to be stone dead before the tree wardens allow that, which we love. We love that the city protects its green infrastructure so well. So we have folks who work alongside city arborists from the front end of construction to protect trees to if you have a construction project on site, maybe one of your buildings is putting a new sewer line in and that's going right through the root system of a mature tree. That construction project will require tree protection ordinances, and we can design those. We also have a team that implements them, so we can put in the root matting, we can put in the tree barriers and all those things to protect those green infrastructure items. So nutrient management, what is that? I mentioned that earlier. That's like our diet. So trees require an input of things, particularly 3 macronutrients. So when you look at a bag of fertilizer, when you're at Home Depot or your garden center, they're going to have 3 numbers on there: 30-00 or 40-10-10. That's nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, and those are the 3 big ones. So what trees do different things with those. I'm not going to get into the weeds of the science behind these, but they do require these things. And then there's another about 15 micronutrients that are also required by trees and shrubs and turf. When you look out in the forest, you go, well, the forests don't need fertilizer. We're not fertilizing forest trees. Well, no. And there's a big difference between the urban and suburban soils that we live in, that we work in, and that you manage versus the forest. And the big one is that in the forest, leaves drop and limbs drop and animals are dying. And not just the big, deer and raccoons, but the microscopic animals that are present in a healthy soil. These things are all occurring and they are regenerating the soil. They're returning those nutrients to the soil that it needs so that the trees uptake it. The dropping of leaves in the fall is a really cool cycle that trees have evolved over millions of years to just feed themselves. Well, in our properties, we blow off all the leaves. We don't allow limbs to sit in front lawns or back lawns. And God forbid we have a dead animal on our turf. Get rid of that as quickly as possible. And we understand that. But when you do that, and trees are getting bigger and bigger, and they're using more and more nutrients, it is very important that we return nutrients to the soil so that those trees and shrubs have a food source. Because what they do with this, they pull these nutrients out of the soil through a mixture of water. It's like a slurry, and it comes in through the roots, and then that goes up into the leaves of the trees. And through photosynthesis, where the light hits the leaves, the trees combine that sunlight and the nutrients to create carbohydrates or sugars. And that's what trees use to survive. That's like our proteins and other nutrients. I'm not a nutritionist, but and fibers, proteins and fibers. My wife would want me to add that. So the carbohydrates are like that. That's how trees build new cells. That's how they have health systems. They have health systems like you and I do. We have white blood cells and immune systems. Trees have their own systems, and they rely on those carbohydrate stores to run those systems. So what we do at Davy is we use a 2-part process, and sometimes we add a third one in the middle of the summer, but a 2-part process that includes liquid humates and traditional fertilizer. And what we do is we do a subterranean soil injection. So this plant healthcare technician has a probe that's about 10 inches into the ground, and it's connected to this tanker truck. And there's a compressor on the truck that is compressing the fluids at about 150 pounds per square inch. And what we're doing is delivering these fluids directly to the root system where they need it. We're bypassing that turf. So if you're just throwing granular fertilizer on the turf, hoping that it'll get down to the root system of the trees, chances are it won't. Turf is highly competitive, and the turf will absorb those nutrients before it even gets there. This pressurization also helps to alleviate soil compaction. So the two biggest issues that our urban and suburban trees face are a deficiency in nutrients, again, because we blow off all the leaves and we take off all the limbs, and soil compaction. Soil compacts in a few different methods. One is just by simple foot traffic over the top of it. Something as small as a 20-pound dog running over and over and over again can really compact soil. So you think of people walking over landscapes, your lawnmowers running across them, especially commercial lawnmowers or giant Z-turns that we love to hot rod around lawns. That's really pushing down the soil. And then you've got the natural world. You have gravity pulling on the crust of the earth that's pulling on the soil. So, gravity is doing its own work to compact that soil. So by pressurizing it, we're breaking it up. I'm going to go back a slide here to talk about those two things: the humates, the spring feed. It's the humates, and that is a basically a fish kelp. There are fish emulsions. They grind up fish guts. The concentrated 55-gallon drum that we get of this smells awful, but it's great for trees. Cats love it too. But it's great for trees. And you're really not feeding the trees. What you're doing is feeding this microbiota. So for the fertilizer to break down so that the trees can uptake it, something has to break that down. Those microbiota are doing that. We're going to talk a little later about soil health, and the microbiota come into that as well. So that spring feed of the humates feeds those. The fall fertilization, we use a patented blend that Davy developed back in the 50s, and we've changed that blend over time to improve it, right? But it's our best efforts at engineering a plant food that mimics the forest floor, the leaf litter, the limbs, all those things that break down in the forest. We want to replicate that. We're not looking to create fast growing trees with a lot of nitrogen. We're not looking to create trees that flower spectacularly, even though you may want that. What we're looking for is plant health care. This is specifically formulated for the health of the plant. So that's what you're getting in this. It's a slow release fertilizer. It won't burn the trees, and it stays working for about a year in the soil. So that's the nutrient management portion.
I have a quick question. Is
Go for it.
plant healthcare technician really their title?
Yeah, that's their title, plant healthcare
Wow.
technician. Yeah.
Okay. Just
So
curious.
we've
I've heard somebody use
yeah,
the term before.
that's a great question. Or you'll hear sometimes say a PHC tech. So PHC for plant
Oh,
healthcare is our shorthand. That I was a PHC tech in the field for a few years before I moved into other roles, and it's a really fun role. It takes a lot of knowledge. You have to be able to identify tree species and know what affects them. Because if I'm sending you out to treat, the dogwood at this property, well, if you don't know what a dogwood tree is, you're in a world of trouble. And a lot of our programs, well, we'll get into it a little later, but the PHC technician role is a great one. Yeah, plant healthcare technician.
okay. Cool.
So soil care is a really important aspect of plant healthcare. Um, this is akin to the house that you live in or the office you work in. So if your house has a slow gas leak, or your office has black mold behind the walls, and you may not know that, you start to develop respiratory issues, right? Both of those things are non-visual things that you don't know about, but you'll develop respiratory issues, and no amount of medicine or rest will solve that. You got to get to the root problem. You got to get the gas leak fixed or the mold fixed or whatever issue you want to use. And so historically, our industry has focused on above ground issues. We look at the tree and we know the roots are important too. But in the past 15 to 20 years, the industry has really shifted towards this focus on soil care. And we put a big premium on it. So what this means is getting the soil where it needs to be for landscape health. The biggest way, not the biggest way, the most frequent way we alleviate this is through the use of air tools. An air spade, that's a patented name. It's this tool that this gentleman's holding here. It's like an air gun, looks kind of like something from Star Wars. It's pretty cool. And you hook it up to an air compressor, and it blows the air out at a supersonic speed. You'd think that it's pretty loud. It's not wildly loud, but what it does is it allows us to dig through soil without damaging roots. It was first engineered for folks who are digging around utility lines so that you're not hitting a gas line with a shovel and blowing yourself to Detroit. You could dig around these things without blowing them up. And we quickly latched onto it in our industry because we said, oh, we could do this with the roots. Now it'll damage the fine feeder roots, the tiny ones. It'll blow those right off, which is fine. The trees will recreate that, but it won't dig into those large buttress roots and the main roots that are going out farther. So it's great for digging around those. Three things that we do for soil compaction and to alleviate soil issues is vertical mulching. So if you have a property with turf, you're probably familiar with soil aeration when your turf manager comes out with those rollers and they're pulling plugs out and they got these, little plugs popping out of the ground and there's some holes there. And what we're doing is opening up the root system of the turf to allow oxygen, water, and nutrients to get to it. Well, this is the same thing, but instead of going 2 to 3 inches down to the root zone of the turf, we're going about 12 inches down and with 2 to 3 inch holes. So these little tubes that we're drilling into the ground. We used to use gas-powered augers to do this, which would beat up the roots pretty bad. It would also beat up the technicians pretty bad. You'd hit a root and the two of you start spinning around like crazy, and it was just awful. So this approach alleviated a lot of those issues. So we drill these holes down and we backfill the holes with permeable substance. So it could be gravel, it could be wood chips. Generally, we're mixing in some of our fertilizer. Biochar is a really cool product that we do a lot of work with, and we backfill with that, all to keep that tube from collapsing on itself quickly. Over time, we know it'll close up, but this will give it a few years to allow, again, oxygen and water and nutrients to get to right where it needs to be for the trees to quickly access it. Root crown excavation is another thing we do a lot of work with air spades. So we blast that soil out around the root crown area. So on a large tree, you're going out 5 to 6 feet from the trunk, and you're tossing all of the soil within that circumference. And what we're looking for is a few things. One, deficiencies in the soil, but we use this approach a lot for girdling roots. So trees that are planted too low or over time have been mulched too high, or if they're in super compacted soil, when the trees send out those roots, they hit the edge of that and they will start to wrap around the trunk of the tree, the lower trunk of the tree underneath the soil. And over time that will suffocate, it'll girdle, it'll strangle the tree. And so we use this air tool to excavate to open that up, and then we'll cut off any of those girdling roots. But it's also good to introduce some of those nutrients into the soil. Finally, radial trenching is the other approach that we take, where we trench out from the trunk of the tree in a sunburst pattern. So think if you got a 10-inch or 15-inch maple tree in the front yard, we'll do 12 to 15 trenches from the trunk straight out to the drip line. And we'll go about 10 to 12 inches down to the root zones. And then we'll backfill those trenches again with permeable stuff, a lot of times with compost and biochar and other products that really benefit the soil to build a healthy soil. And all of this is, again, to build a healthy lifestyle for those trees, a healthy living space. Any questions on soil?
I don't have any questions in the chat.
Okay.
So.
Anyone who's listening, feel free to throw questions into the chat, and I'm happy to stop and talk about it. It's always best if we're on the topic, right? So finally, pest and disease management is the third stool or third leg of our plant healthcare stool. The picture you see here, the spotted lanternfly, I'm hoping that all of you have heard of this. I'm hoping that it's not affecting you too badly. Heads up, it will. They're here and they're abundant. So the spotted lanternfly, and we're going to talk about two particular ones today, but since I got this picture up, let's talk about spotted lanternfly. So pests that came in, first discovered up in Bucks County, Pennsylvania back in 2012, something like that. It has moved south since then. It's not a flying insect, so it's not flying south. This thing hitches rides on all sorts of things. In the top left there, it's egg mass. It's that dull gray, brownish looking clay stuff. It almost looks like chewing gum. The female will deposit her eggs and then cover it with this stuff. And she'll do this on anything, not just trees. You'll see these on fence posts. And the biggest way that these things travel throughout the United States is that the females will lay her eggs on train cars that are sitting for a long time in a rail yard, or RVs that sit in a backyard for a season, semi truck trailers that are sitting for a long time, and then they move along. The in our region right now, we are in between the first instar and the fourth instar. I was at let's see, I was on Military Road where it hits Western Avenue this morning, and I saw some of those fourth instar nymphs. But the first instars I've seen up where I am in Howard County. So we're in that stage where they're moving. Late summer, there'll be those adults at the bottom. They don't kill trees, they weaken them for property managers. What you need to know is that they are a tremendous nuisance. People hate them, they're gross, they'll jump on you, they'll congregate near entrances, and you just go, yeah, what are these icky things? And the other thing that they do is they feed on the sugars of the trees. So we talked earlier about how photosynthesis results in carbohydrates or sugars. These things pierce the vascular system of the tree. They feed on those sugars, then they excrete that sugar. They poop it out, for lack of better words. And that is the sweet, sticky substance. It'll coat anything that's underneath it. So if you have a tree that is inundated with these and it's over your entryway will be sweet and sticky if it's over a car, if it's over a balcony, a pool, a patio. After sweet and sticky hits there, that starts to attract airborne mold called sooty mold. It's a particulate, we breathe it, it's part of our air, but it loves sugars. And then once it starts hitting on that, everything underneath it turns this sooty black gray color. And so your patio might become unusable. Your pool deck is going to become gross if these things are near there. So again, this isn't going to kill trees. It's going to disrupt the enjoyment of outdoor properties, and it will weaken trees. So that's the first one. I'll bookend this portion with two different things to keep in mind right now. Spotted lanternfly on the front end. So like us, like trees and shrubs, they're living beings like us or our pets, and they require that input, that medical input. They can catch ailments like we do. So pre and post product application, and we use the term product for herbicides and pesticides. It's just a friendlier term for those kinds of things. Can help manage the infection and symptoms. So common inflictions, the mid-Atlantic, scale is a big one. This will hit hollies. It'll hit, gosh, everything gets scale. Euonymus, oaks get scale. It's called scale because it's an insect that develops a shell over it. They're hard scale and soft scale. There's I think 160 different types of scale in the eastern United States, all treated pretty much the same way. Hard scale is a little tougher. Soft scale you can spray with products and it'll penetrate them. The hard scale, it can't get through that scale. So we treat that with systemic products. Systemic products are products that travel through the vascular system of the tree and affect anything that's feeding on them. Aphids and scale insects will weaken trees to the point where they will be susceptible to death from other issues. It won't kill the tree right out, but it will weaken them to the point. Aphids are a little more aesthetic. They're gross, like the spotted lanternfly. These are sucking insects. They excrete honeydew. They will hit lindens really hard and tulip poplars, along with some other things. Oh, back to scale. Crepe myrtle scale is a huge issue in the district right now. So if you have crepe myrtles and their bark is turning black, I'm certain they're being hit by scale. Really easy to treat. Spotted lanternfly, we already talked about. Borers, there are hundreds of different boring insects. They are interesting insects. They're not boring, but they are borers. And they drill into trees and lay their eggs in the vascular system of the trees. The emerald ash borer is the most prominent, well-known one right now. In our region, if you have an ash tree that's not being treated, it's probably dead. So we don't really talk much about emerald ash borer in this region anymore. I was on the phone with my friend in Minneapolis before this call, and they are deep in emerald ash borer right now. So it's traveled west to Minneapolis, Colorado, those things. But we've lived through it here. Canker, hypoxylon canker is a canker disease that affects oaks. There are many different canker diseases. These are vascular fungal infections. Generic leaf disease is a fungal infection in leaves. If you have cherries on your property, like our famous cherries of DC, Usually around August, you'll see them defoliating. Before that, you'll see these necrotic spots, these little dead spots in the leaves. It's just leaf disease. And then the other few are bacterial and fungal diseases. So these are some of the common afflictions. And there's two that are highlighted. I'm going to come back to beech leaf disease. How are we doing on time, Sarah? I meant to ask.
We have 34 minutes left.
34. Okay. I will slow it down some then. Sorry. So some of the plant healthcare approaches that we take for these kinds of things is we have targeted plant healthcare approaches, and targeted plant healthcare approaches address specific issues. So if you're a property manager and you call me out and you say, hey, our euonymus hedge here looks awful. And I say, yeah, that it's full of scale. We'll treat that. And here's how we treat it. We provide that option. And that might be a 1 or 2 time visit. And here are the costs for that. The inspect and treat program is where we try and get most of our clients over to, and it really helps us manage the properties for you. So the inspect and treat program gets our plant healthcare technicians, a qualified technician on site multiple times throughout the growing season. And what they are doing is they are identifying issues on site and they are treating them when they see it, if it falls within a certain range. Now, if it's outside of a normal, and this is all in contract language and discussions with you. If it's a pest or a disease that's not typical or that's something we don't carry with us, there might be an added cost to take care of that. But, things like going back to euonymus scale, that would be part of it. The technician's out there, if there's a little bit of scale popping up, they will treat that as they see it so that it doesn't run away without options. And so we're getting ahead of those outbreaks. It's a lower cost for individual plants because we're looking at the overall aspect of the program. It's a higher cost of a program, though, because we're looking at your entire property. So it's a higher direct cost generally, but it's also a higher savings. Corporate hates me saying that it's like an insurance plan for your landscape because it's not. We can't guarantee anything. We're not going to replace shrubs that die on this, but it is somewhat like an insurance plan because we are protecting your assets without you having to. One of the big benefits.
Just
Go ahead.
like it's preventative maintenance. Like we go out and we snake drains, on
Exactly.
a periodic basis. We unclog gutters or remove leaves off of rooftops to prevent things. So otherwise, we all end up paying more money. And I'm sure the board members on this call are like, this would be, something great to have in place as far as, because trees are expensive, putting new ones in and maintaining and replacing shrubs regardless of who you're working with. So
Absolutely. And that's the big benefit of the inspect and treat program is the last bullet point there. It removes the onus of awareness. If you're a property manager or board member and you say, well, I don't really know plants. Well, we don't expect you to. That's why you hire us. Let us get ahead of it for you and let us provide that awareness. Let us provide that security for you. Not only are we looking for those biotic issues, pests and diseases, but in this inspect and treat program, we're looking for abiotic issues. So if we see a plant that is failing and, it's a tree or a shrub that can't handle heavy water, and we look to our left and we see a downspout 3 feet away pointing directly at the tree, we're going to bring that up to you and say, hey, maybe you should reroute this. Or if you have, maybe your irrigation has leaks and we see that. We see standing water on a day that there hasn't been rain for a while. Or maybe it's a species that just shouldn't be there. So this program helps get away from you having to go out and identify problems or your landscaper. And we'll talk about that a brief minute. So landscaping companies are some are really good at plant healthcare. Some are not. Some of them claim they are. And if they're not committed to plant healthcare, then you really want to find a provider that is. We work with a lot of landscape companies in the area. We're happy to work alongside them. Some landscape companies are hesitant to call us because they know we have our own landscape division and they think, oh, if Davey Tree gets onto site, they're just going to push their landscape. We're not. I mean, we'd love to, but if a landscape company comes to me and says, I have this property, can you help us out? I would never try and poach that property for our landscape maintenance division. And if you have a preferred landscape vendor, and I completely understand if you do, we'll never try and unseat them to get our landscapers on site. If a bid ever comes out and we can go after it, we'd love to, but we'll never try and do that. So um,
Well, you guys are more of a specialist anyways, right? Like,
so we are, yeah, we are, and um, we're specialists. We we have licenses and certifications that allow us to do this work in a very responsible manner. Again, not that other companies don't, but this is what we do really well, and we've been doing it for 145 years. So, and not just a pesticide license. Having a license is great. It allows you to do things, but we have specifically for plant healthcare, we are sending our technicians to all the conferences locally so that they learn what's happening. I'm going to get a drink real quick so that they know what's coming down the pipeline. We have local training sessions just for our plant healthcare technicians. So we have a week long in the Mid Atlantic. We have a week long program coming up in 3 weeks in July, where we bring all our plant healthcare technicians from the Northeast. So everywhere from our Portland, Maine office down to our Richmond and Charlottesville office. They all come into Baltimore at Towson University for a week, and we are training them on what is coming up right now in our region that we need to know about. And when you are on these properties, what should you be looking out for? So getting ahead of that game. We have a comprehensive learning management system, an online learning management system for our employees only. And we have our plant healthcare technicians taking courses on there constantly. They get rewards for doing so. So we have incentives for them to do that so that they're getting better and better at their job, which is taking care of your properties. So it's again, yeah, it's more than just having a pesticide license. It's that continuing education that goes along with it to ensure that we are addressing your needs as they pop up. So another plant healthcare issue that I want to talk about that is really important for our region right now is this beech leaf disease. Beech leaf disease was discovered in Northeast Ohio, actually close to our headquarters in Lake County, Northeast Ohio. This was also around 2012, 2014. We started to notice beech trees failing. Now, to back up a little more, what is a beech tree? For those that don't know it, a beech tree, and I should have put a picture of this in there, but you can look it up. This smooth gray bark. It's the bark that people like to carve their names into or little hearts around their name and their loved ones' names. As an arborist, I have to recommend against that heavily. It's awful for the trees. Beeches don't compartmentalize decay well. It's not good to carve trees up, but people still do it, and they're very easy to do that. So, real smooth bark, shallow bark. That's why it's easy to carve. And these are large trees. They're a big part of our landscape. The beeches live. Their range is from southern Canada to northern Florida, from the Mississippi east. So we're in the middle of it here. Go out into Patapsco Forest, go out into western Maryland or the mountains of Virginia. You'll see beeches everywhere. They're a primal species of our eastern forest, and they're important for a few reasons. One, for their wood value, their aesthetic value, but they also produce a beech nut, and this nut is highly valued by wildlife. So everything from squirrels, flying squirrels, foxes to deer. And a lot of our mammals are reliant on this for one of their food sources. So this disease is a big problem. So the beech is widely spread, great landscape tree. They're beautiful. They're slow growing, so they're not planted a lot in landscapes because people go, I want a big tree quickly. But once you have them set, God, they're gorgeous. And so this disease was discovered in Northeast Ohio. It has traveled eastward since then. What we know is that the beeches that are afflicted by this have nematodes, which are these microscopic worms, nematodes in the leaves of the tree. And when fall occurs, when autumn occurs, these nematodes will travel back into the buds of next year's leaves and will overwinter there. So it's not something that clears up at the end of every season. When those new leaves open up, the nematodes are there. And we don't know what the mechanism is for the dieback in the tree. The nematodes don't necessarily cause the damage. Our best thinking is that they are vectoring in or carrying a fungus with them. And so when they get into the leaves, they carry this fungus in. And what this does is for young beeches, so beeches that are 0 to 10 years old, they're dying within 3 to 5 years of infection. The larger beeches are living longer. There are examples of mature beeches dying specifically from this disease, not as many as the young ones, but it's still happening, and it is weakening the trees to allow other things to come in. So beech leaf disease is a debilitating thing, and it's here. It's Baltimore City called us 2 weeks ago. We handle all the tree applications for them. They said we've got positive IDs of this all over and all the city parks. Can you help us out? What's the treatment plan, and how do we manage this? So we know it's here. Hasn't hit the eastern shore of Maryland yet, at least positively. We're pretty sure it's there. We just haven't had any positive IDs, but definitely in the district it's there. So
Do we know where it's come from, like where it came from
we
originally?
don't know. A lot of these we can trace back, interestingly, like emerald ash borer. One of the most interesting things about emerald ash borer is we've traced it back to the pallet that it came in on. And a lot of these, especially pests, a lot of these pests travel because of global trade. The disease is a little different because it floats, and these nematodes is we don't know where they came from, but a lot of uh, tree pests travel through global trade, and specifically through pallets that they move around on. But wood products are moving all over the world all the time. Go to a pet store, you find sticks for hamsters to chew on, and look at the bag; it'll say "Made in China." And you could walk out in the forest and pick up 10 sticks, but nope,
True.
we import them, and that's just part of the global trade. I get it, lower prices for everyone, right or wrong. But what that does is allow these things to come in. And since you asked that question, and since we have a little bit of time, and we'll get back to beech leaf disease in a second, um, you know, these pests, because there's a question that's often asked is why are our trees succumbing to this? Are the trees where these pests come from being decimated also? Well, no, these things have evolved to live not so much in harmony, but in a way that they're not killing each other. So we have forest pests here that kill native trees when they are in trouble. A great example is the pine bark borer. This is an insect that bores into pine trees. It only kills pine trees that are already failing. So when a
Mm.
pine tree is failing, when for whatever reason, if it's a lack of nutrients, lack of water, maybe a limb got snapped off in a storm and a fungal issue got in there, these trees will send out chemical signals. We don't know why, but they'll send out chemical signals, usually methane or another related gas. And that calls in insects. For pines, it's the pine bark borer. And these insects will bore into the tree. They create these tiny little pinholes, and they vector in a fungus also that envelops the vascular system of the tree, kills the tree, and then the tree falls over.
So
I
just
like
asking,
to believe it's
basically.
fascinating. I like to believe, and this is complete conjecture and it's my fantasy, I like to believe that these trees know they're going to die. They know that they are the nutrient recharge for the soil. And so they call in the insects to quickly finish them off so they can fall over and become plant food and continue the cycle of trees. We do know, and again, it's a little off topic, but because it's fun tree stuff, we do know that trees share nutrients with other trees through their root systems because they
Mhm.
graft onto each other. And we know that parent trees will favor their offspring. So if you have an oak tree and two baby oak trees to either side, one of them from their seed, one of them from another, and there's a nutrient shortage, one of the, both baby oaks are short on nitrogen, that parent oak can shift nitrogen to its own offspring, and it'll choose its own over its non-own offspring. So again,
Mhm.
I like to believe that these trees are trying to return themselves to the soil because they are selfless beings. Who knows if that's true, but it makes us feel really good about trees, and I think it's a valid point. Um, so, anyways, pine bark borers are native insects to our region. They don't kill our pines except when they are sick. Emerald ash borer is a great example. The ashes of Asia, where this thing came from, they're not affected by it unless they are already succumbing to other issues. The borer will get into them, they'll kill them off faster. Our ashes have zero experience with these. They have no health system to fight them off like the ashes of Asia. And so when these things came here and continue to be here, our ashes have no defense against them. It's indiscriminate killing. So we know where a lot of these diseases come from. We know that the emerald ash borer came from Asia. We know Dutch elm disease came from somewhere in Europe. Um, and some of the other chestnut blight, we're pretty sure came from Europe as well. And some of the other ones we can trace back. But beech leaf disease, we don't know where it came from exactly.
Mm.
So we manage it though. We manage it, and spotted lanternfly we can manage also. We spot it to go back to management programs. If you have a tree that's dripping sap onto your pool deck, if you have a tree that's dripping this honeydew over your parking area and your residents are just complaining because their cars are becoming disgusting, we can inject those trees. We can spray them if it's a certain size. We can inject them. We can do different things to help dampen the effect on those trees. For beech leaf disease, this is interesting. We're treating that through fertilization. So in both of our visits, when we were talking earlier about nutrient management, in both the fertilizer and the spring humates visit, we're mixing in a product called phosphonate acid. And phosphonate acid is a potassium product. It's really good for plant health. It helps strengthen cell walls. That helps trees retain moisture. It's really improving the internal health of the tree, not just through food, but through its own self. And what we have found with beech leaf disease is treating beeches with this product, doing a soil drench when possible, um, to allow this product to travel up into the tree. Not only are you giving the tree this really good health product, it's also helping fight off the beech leaf disease because this product has a secondary benefit of working like a fungicide. It's labeled as a fertilizer, so there's not as many restrictions around it. It's a non-toxic item. It's very good for the trees. So beech leaf disease can be managed through that. We highly recommend that if you have beeches on your property, that you start looking at this program to protect them. Like any health program, be it human or dog or even your house, proactive approaches are far more successful and far less costly than if you call us and say, my beech tree is half dead. Can you please help us out? Chances are we can't. You're going to be throwing good money down the toilet. So let's get ahead of it and start helping it from the start. So those are the two big afflictions in the Mid-Atlantic that I want to talk about. I mean, the rest of them are there, but these are the ones that we do a lot of news articles and stuff on. And really, that takes care of the plant healthcare side of things, which discusses all of plant healthcare. I know I'm 20, 19, 18 minutes early, but I want to leave time for questions. We love talking trees. People generally have some pretty good questions. So I'll leave this up here for a few minutes if you all want to write down stuff, and then I'll stop sharing so I can look directly at you. But Sarah, do you have any questions right now in the queue?
I do not, but if you have a question, feel free to drop it in the Q&A section and we can get Lou to answer it. So
Yeah.
people, if
Well,
you
that's coming in. I want to talk about what my role is and why I'm giving this presentation, so that you know how to get a hold of Davey Tree for any questions. So I'm what's called the regional business developer. I work with commercial properties all throughout Maryland and DC. I have a counterpart in Northern Virginia that I work with regularly. You all have offices down in the Newport News, Norfolk region. I have two people down there actually that cover that area. Yeah,
with
a- and Richmond.
and
So,
Richmond.
and I think they're doing a lunch and learn tomorrow. Is that right?
Oh, I don't know. Probably.
Yeah, I think Shannon's doing one tomorrow. But what we do is we're in place. You know, Davy has 5 offices in Maryland. We have 3 offices in Northern Virginia, and it can get confusing as to who should you call. And you know, you get to one of these offices and they bounce you around. I'm the one contact for you. So you call me, email me, you could text me. That's my cell number. I do really great with texts. You know, it's 2025. A lot of us do. You know, shoot me a text. Tell me what your property is, what your issue is. Let's find a time to meet up. And I'll connect you with the local office when it gets to that point. But I want to talk to you about, I take a holistic approach to your property. So the tree care side of things, they'll come and they'll look at the trees and I'll say, this is the issue and you should prune this and that. But you know, what I look at is the tree care side of things, the landscape side of things, those environmental services, so that we can put together a package for you. What we want to be is a turnkey solution to commercial properties and multi-family housing units as well. I don't want you to have to go to 6 different vendors and call 9 different offices to come up with one answer. Get a hold of me. I will do the heavy lifting for you, get you exactly what you need, connect you with exactly who you need to be connected with. And chances are I'll be there along the entire process as well.
Still no questions in the chat, but you want to talk about heritage trees? Because people use that term
Yeah.
all the time, and I don't think people necessarily know like what is involved when you have a heritage tree on your property. And
So that's a specific term for DC, and a lot
yeah.
of DC folks don't know that that doesn't exist outside DC, which I love. Um, going back to earlier, DC has done a wonderful job, and this is going back hundreds of years. I just finished the biography of Grant, U.S. Grant, and part of it was him overseeing the planting of trees on the Capitol and along streets of D.C. So even back then in the 1870s, we were focusing on trees in the district, which is really cool to me. We're very blessed to live in a city and a region that values these so much. I'm from the Midwest. We value trees, but nowhere near as much as we do here in the Mid Atlantic. It's really cool. So, a heritage tree, DC has tree laws in place um, that require a lot of permitting. It can seem like a giant pain, which it can be and cost. But again, what they're trying to do is protect you as residents of the district from just the wild destruction of forests that happen around the area. So, if you have a tree that's over a certain diameter, uh, so we measure trees in diameter, sorry, at 4.5 feet off the ground, the diameter of the tree. And you can do that by taking a measurement of the circumference and dividing it by 3.14 pi. Or we have special measuring tape that does the math for us. It's really nice, called diameter tape.
Oh,
Yeah, it's pretty slick. Uh, so, and so based on the diameter of the tree, which actually the city converts over to circumference for some weird reason, um, they decide if you need a permit to remove that tree. So under a certain threshold, there's no permit required. I think it's 13 inches, like 13.9 inches in circumference is where you need a permit. And between that and right around 30 inches in diameter is where you need a permit tree. Anything over 30, and I'm trying to get these numbers right. I don't do many of these measurements. It's the folks in the city that do. But over that, that's where you could become a heritage tree. And a heritage tree is a large tree that is virtually impossible to get a permit for unless the tree is dead. Um, the and the city works with property managers. They really work well with arborists too. So, if you have a dying tree and it's a heritage tree, if you call a reputable company that has relationships with city forestry and and the city forestry trusts them, Davy's one of these companies. There are other ones out there, but we don't run around just crushing trees. We are very careful about how we approach trees. We're very pro keeping trees. We want to keep them alive. It's for the good of the environment. It's for the good of your property. And from a selfish standpoint, it's good for our company. If I cut a tree down, that's one cost. It's gone. I'll
mhm.
never get that. I'll never get that revenue back. But by helping trees stay alive, yes, it comes at a cost to you because I'm providing services, but that's a revenue stream for us. So we want to keep trees alive. It's good for everyone. Um, and so but if you have a tree that's on the edge, we can help work with city forestry to either get it removed if it requires that, or explain to you, your board members, your shareholders, why this tree can't be removed and the benefits that it provides, and come up with a solution. Maybe it's just removing some dead limbs from the top. That could just be all
My
that's
goodness.
required.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
there's a lot of science behind trees as they're living beings. There's a lot of reasons for what we do. One service that we provide that we haven't talked about that's really important is tree risk assessments. So
Mm.
especially for commercial properties, if you have a neighboring property that has a tree leaning over yours, and you're at an impasse. You call this neighboring HOA and say, you got this tree that's leaning over ours. It's a threat to our property. And they say, well, we're not going to pay for it. You might have a tree risk assessment done. And what that is an arborist, a qualified tree risk assessment qualified arborist, which I am, can come out to your property and they'll perform a inspection of this tree. And what we're looking for is a few things. One, is there a target present? Is there something underneath this tree? Will it hit something? What's the likelihood of failure? So what's the likelihood of whole tree failure or a limb falling out of this tree and hitting a target? And then what are the consequences of that failure? So is a target present? What's the likelihood of this tree failing either in whole or in part? And what are the consequences if it does fail? And then we assign a risk rating to that tree. We can't provide guidance on, the number one question people always ask is, well, should we cut it down or should we do this? We can't tell you that. Your risk tolerance is individual to you or to your board or whatever. Oftentimes, insurance companies will provide a lot of insight on that, but we can provide you a risk matrix to tell you what level of risk this tree is. This service comes at a cost, but you get a nice report put together. Boards can discuss it. You can go to neighboring properties and say this, we can't go onto a property and perform a risk assessment on a tree without permission, but it helps mediate situations. So it's an important tool to know about.
Cool. See, no questions in the chat. So we can call it a day. I really appreciate your time, Lou. Always very helpful.
Yeah.
Informative.
We love talking trees. We love helping people out. We really like being part of the district. We like working with EJF quite a bit. Your boards are great. Everyone has their own personalities, which is cool. And we got here after 145 years by communicating, by doing what we say we're going to do, and by helping communities along. And we're happy to serve.
Yeah. Well, thank you. All right. Well, that concludes our webinar. Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.